All right, good morning, everybody. It's 9:19 a.m. on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. I appreciate everybody hanging on for us while we were working through our IT issues. All right, we'll move on with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all would stand and join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Randy, if you would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Ellens,
Is absent?
Commissioner Reynolds,
Here.
Commissioner Chaparro,
Present.
Vice Chair Murillo,
Present.
Chair Sanchez.
Present. The commission convenes as the Board of County Commissioners and the County Board of Finance in open session. So with this special meeting, we'll move on to agenda item number 1, which is under approvals. It's a resolution adopting the 2024-2028 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan. So if I can get a motion and a second to begin discussion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Chaparro.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Murillo. Okay. All right. Let's see, who's gonna, okay, we're waiting on Ms. Blackwell and Mr. Macias.
So let me give you the number that you can call. So it's going to be the 575. And if you call 85, and if you call into that number, it'll link you directly into the meeting where you can participate. Chairman, we should have Commissioner Allen's participation momentarily.
Okay.
And forgive me, I may not have heard what you said earlier.
Oh, I'm just saying we've got a motion and a second for agenda item number 1, so we can begin the discussion when Commissioner Ellens joins.
And again, Mr. Chairman, we'll take a little bit of guidance from the commission. The commission had been looking, I don't know if you certainly have had the list, ICIP, we can go through each project, or the commission can perhaps take the opportunity to focus in on particular projects that you may have questions about and see if that facilitates the discussion. It's really the pleasure of the commission. We have posted, we're showing the approximately 66 different projects that appear currently on the ICIP list. Or maybe we can take it in terms of what doesn't appear on the list that any commissioner may feel should be added. And I believe I can hear Commissioner Ellens on the line. And again, just for
Yes, I'm here.
we may want to reflect his participation in the meeting rather than his absence.
Yes, very good. I'm getting a nod from Randy, so we've recorded that. So thank you, Commissioner Ellens, for calling in. I'll leave it to, my suggestion was going to be that I think we go through, I would like to take the opportunity to go through the projects and educate ourselves on projects that we have in our current ICIP list, which is in our agenda, the amount of the project, the remaining amount, and understanding partly why the priority is given to where it's at. I'm open to suggestions from the other commissioners if there's another or a different way we want to go through this, but.
So if we can do it then department by department, if we can start with item number 1, I'm going to ask John Gwynn to come forward so that he can discuss, at least on the top 10, the flood commission projects. And again, I do want to alert you and anyone, I think we created some extra copies of the entire ICIP list, and there is the scope of work that's associated with each of these projects.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Gwynn, Flood Commission Director. So I'll first talk about the number one project that's on the ICIP list, which is the McNutt Pond. It's related to the Gardner Dam project. As you are aware, the Gardner Dam's been having a lot of issues over the years, and we have received funding from legislature to breach that structure and basically take it out of service. One of the things that does is that pushes water down the arroyo, the historic arroyo, to places that haven't seen water since the dam was built in the early 60s. So this project is one of the ways that we're handling that to make sure that people don't get flooded from that water that's going down. That's in addition to the Gardner Dam project, which creates a large ponding area upstream of the dam to stop the water. That's what the legislature has funded. So these are additional projects that are down below. There's a berm that goes in place that directs the water into an existing ponding area that will acquire and make it a larger.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can supplement some of the presentations as we go along in terms of the discussions that we've been having, again, so that the commission is aware, we will be receiving $3.5 million in order to do the actual dam itself. That money is forthcoming. We should have some kind of grant agreement within the next 60 days. One of the reasons that it's item number one, the governor's efforts provided that specific funding for Gardner. The $2 million is an achievable amount out of this next legislative session, and with the additional $2 million, it will complete the entirety of that project. So we're well within striking distance. Again, Mr. Gwen has communicated that the $3.5 million may address the dam-related issues, but we still, in order to address the magnitude of the geographical area, we still need the additional monies to complete the totality of that project. If we're able to gain that additional $2 million, then we put to rest the flooding issues south of La Union.
Questions about that particular project?
Are there any questions on the item number one, which is the Gardner Dam?
Okay, so.
I think the only question I have is the $2 million. I mean, is it absolutely, I know you're talking on trying to finish the project, but understanding if the $3.5 million from the state is taking care of the dam, what is the $2 million in that project that we're taking care of?
Okay, John.
And it's a berm. I know you said an additional berm, but what are we, I'm trying to understand.
Okay, probably the best way for me to explain that is if I can go to Google Earth. So give me just a minute.
Right, I was going to ask that you show
I mean, does
the
it,
map.
I guess the question, I guess my question isn't so much the location, but understanding, is it absolutely necessary to actually have the full flood, to have the flood protection? Or is this just completion of the entire flood the flood plan for that entire area?
I think once you see it geographically, you're going to see where the population centers are.
Right.
And the additional effort to protect those population centers. And I assume that you'll agree that we should be continuing to make efforts to make sure that the entirety of that population is protected.
You can see this green area here. This is where the existing Gardner Dam is. So the 3.5 million that Mr. Macias was talking about puts a hole in the dam, which is this structure here. And we dig out a pond back here to handle up a pond that will handle up to the 100-year event. But we still have to release water. And you can see the historic arroyo here. And so what will happen is that over the years, the Gardner Dam has not released water. It doesn't have an outlet. So no water has come down here in 50 years, 50, 60 years. So it's going to be important as we look downstream of what's here to handle what's down below. So there is an existing berm that's here because of the storms last year. This is private property. This was breached, and any water that fell below the dam went down and actually flooded this whole area. And so one of the things that our project calls for is for us acquiring this existing berm and rebuilding it. And that would push the water down this arroyo, which is an existing arroyo. There's a ponding area right here at McNutt that already exists. We would also acquire this ponding area and enlarge it in order to handle those waters so that we're not flooding any of these folks. And if you look downstream, this is that large subdivision, I believe it's called Cielo Dorado.
Cielo Dorado.
Thank you. And they have an airstrip right in the center of the subdivision. So there's some very high-end properties here, as well as farming activities. There's a dairy. So all of this is protecting those things. And that's again, it's additional on top of the work that's being done at the dam itself. So this is just additional projects that we're trying to put in to make sure that areas that haven't seen water from the dam don't get flooded after this. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that leads my next question, which is, do we have an idea of the population that this would affect?
We haven't looked at it in terms of population. We know that it directly affects McNutt Road, which is a very highly traveled road. And based on last year's storms, there were piles of sand and running water across McNutt Road. So this would address that as well. So I don't have an exact number for you in terms of population,
Okay.
but it is definitely millions of dollars of property, if you want to look at it that way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If we may, Mr. Chairman, jump to item number 6, if there's no additional questions related to
I have another question.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Reynolds.
Go ahead.
Yeah, looking at the berm and then looking at the, looks like the retention pond, that's what we're talking about, is buying that land for retention pond.
Yes.
Okay, in looking at the calculation, let's say we put a hole in the dam so we'll actually drain into the arroyos and then get eventually down to the retention pond. How, that retention pond currently doesn't look like it's large enough to handle the amount of water we're talking about. So how much bigger, how much land are we talking about, and how much more will we have to enlarge that?
So if you look at the existing ponding area, it's pretty much the same area. We just make it significantly deeper. One of the misconceptions that you're missing is that we're not just putting a hole in the Gardner Dam. We're going upstream of the dam, so behind the dam where the water is normally stored, and we're digging all that out below grade, and we're building a massive pond. A pond that's large enough to handle any of our normal storms that we would get here.
100-year, 50-year, 25-year?
100-year storm.
Okay, looking at the dam, so you're saying you're going to enlarge the dam to hold more water.
Not enlarge the dam, we're getting rid of the dam. The dam's gone.
Okay, so you're just going to move all the water directly down the arroyo right into the
No,
retention pond?
we're building a pond behind the dam. So the dam goes away. Think of the dam as a berm that's above ground.
John, go back to the picture.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at it on my
Well,
computer.
just so
but
that
yeah.
everybody
I think everyone should
follow
see
the
it.
discussion.
So think of the dam as a berm that's above ground. The ponding area,
Blow it up as much as you can.
so this dam is no longer viable. So just think of it going away completely. We're going to take all of this soil that's behind here all the way back to this peak back here, and all the way around here, and we're removing it down almost 20 feet. That soil then creates a big hole that's below grade.
Retention pond.
A retention, it's not a retention, detention. So it will have a pipe that will allow water out slowly,
Okay.
okay? So when the storm comes in, excuse me, the water will come out of the pipe much, much slower than it would as if there was a storm. And so it'll still go downstream, but it'll go downstream slowly.
Okay, so now, so the $3.5 million is supposed to do this?
Yes.
correct.
Okay, so then the other retention area that we're talking about, that is going to be a retention pond because you don't really want the water moving past that one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so for that one, how much land are we talking about? I'm not looking at the size here. Are we talking about,
So
is this 20 acres, 5 acres, 50 acres?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Oops, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction.
No, you're going the right direction. You got, yeah, left.
It's off to your left.
It's this one here.
No.
No, I think it's a little one beside that
No.
to the west.
No, it's this whole area.
Okay,
We will acquire this entire section.
okay,
So it is everything, all the way from this road,
right.
all the way, there's a bluff that's here,
Yep,
following this bluff all the way around.
that looks
This will
pretty
be
deep.
excavated down about 6 to 8 feet.
Yeah, so the other retention pond to the
Yeah, no,
west.
I understand what you're.
To the west is not really going to do anything, it just slow it down a little bit.
Right, what this one up here does to the west, this doesn't retain any water, this will literally just direct it. Okay, it'll literally just make sure the water follows this path.
Okay, now you got some property there that has to go through on the right, there on the
Yes.
lower right-hand corner.
Yes, so it'll require getting easements and rights of way for the entire process. That's part of what the $2 million will be spent for.
And along that property, we will have to work on that arroyo to make sure it doesn't expand as the water flows
Correct.
past that. So that's going to be our responsibility as well.
Correct.
And the private owners good with that?
Well, that's part of what we have to work on.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the water has been going this direction for years. Even with the Gardner Dam not releasing water, there's a lot of land here where water lands below the dam and flows down. That's why you see an arroyo on the aerial map, because it already gets there. And when the storm last year happened, even though the dam didn't breach, there was still so much water below the dam that it breached this structure. It was just a pile of sand that was pushed up by an owner, but you can tell from the vegetation, the dark coloring, that it's been there for years.
Is there any chance we're going to need more than the 2 million?
Based on construction costs, it's hard to say. Fuel prices are dropping. That'll help us a bunch because one of our biggest costs is moving dirt. There's a possibility it'll go higher for sure. We won't know until the design is complete, but that's based on the latest estimates that we have from the engineers.
Okay.
And that's based at today's prices, not 10-year-ago prices.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay,
You said you're moving on to the.
to number 6.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, this is the Hatch Dam. It's been called many things over the years, Spring Canyon Dam, Hatch Dam, it's all the same thing. Essentially, a few years ago, we had estimated that we had all the money we needed for matching. Legislature had given us a little over $4 million for our portion of the match. Between the escalation in prices of fuel and materials, this project has increased dramatically. There's also been some design changes that the Army Corps found that they needed to do through one of their safety reviews. And the dam itself is expanding somewhat. So essentially, one of the things that this dam originally was priced at about $12.7 million. The current prices, including all the engineering and land acquisition put us around 20 million. So this money gets us really close to having our portion of the match for that project. It has slid a little bit in terms of timelines. Again, COVID has really affected the Army Corps. They're still, as of today, doing all their work from home. So collaboration and all the other work, it just slows things down. We're looking at 2024 now for construction. At least that's the last numbers I got as of last week. Questions?
And what, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vice Chair Murillo,
the
please go
hatch
ahead.
dam, what is the complete amount, the total amount?
Right now, we believe it's around $20 million.
20?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And of course, with so much time passing even between now and when actual construction is going to cost, that could change as well. One of the things, this is probably a good point, is that we've already reached the maximum amount that the federal government can put in as part of this program. So their program only allows them to put in $10 million. Originally, it was planned for them to put in 65% of the project and us to put in 35. But once we get to the $10 million, everything above that is ours. So I'm working with some folks at the Army Corps. There may be another funding source where I can switch the project on the federal side to a different program. So in the meantime, I will be working at that. But for now, I have to go with what we have because there's no guarantee that they'll even do that at this point. So we're assuming that this is going to cover our last portion of the match.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes, have you checked with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to see if they have any funds available for some of this? Because when I was out there a couple of months ago, they said that they do have a program that allows them when they're going through communities, having to bring into communities like the La Union and maybe Summer Hatch, if there's a requirement to go through some property that's actually part of the community, that they do have some funds to help with that. Have you checked on that at all?
I'm actually in contact with NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service, which is part of RD, of Rural Development. And essentially what they have told me, and I've heard this from other agencies as well, is that they can't be the match. So you can't match federal dollars with federal dollars from another program. That becomes very tricky. And Jonathan, you can probably speak to some of that as well.
Yes, sir. Chair Sanchez and Commission, that is known as supplanting. And oftentimes, unless they give explicit allowabilities for utilization of the federal funding, we can't in some of those instances, but it is programmatic specific.
Let me make sure I understand. So you're saying that $10 million, because it's federal, we can't accept any additional federal monies?
Correct. Local, state is how we have to get our match for it.
C'est la vie.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that one?
No, I think my concern is given the fact that I don't know that, given the list, this $5.7 million is even achievable in the near future. I mean, I'm just looking at the ICIP list. I mean, I'm just being realistic. And so I think as we go on, and I think I question where our top 10 are, and I get why we have it so high, because it's already in process. We have a majority of the money for it.
Correct.
But I guess my question still comes in, where do we expect to get this money from if we're going to, this $5 million, other than our reserves? Because, I mean, there's a ton of other projects that we could prioritize ahead of this if we're not going to get the $5 million where, you know, we get a lot more done and knock more things off this list than, and I know this is in my district. I'm just trying to figure out what the feasibility of this is.
Will allow me to address that. Certainly any kind of money that we can get from the legislature Again, we can certainly have some additional discussions with the Corps of Engineer in terms of any additional commitment on their part because of the scale of the project. We can have that. We can have a discussion in terms of commitment, but we have to really start pushing the project as much as possible because we've had a commitment of state funds now for several years, and we cannot take any risk of any of that reverting back to the state and then complicating our situation even more. So there is going to have to be a very aggressive effort to try to reduce that gap. And yes, the Flood Commission does sit on certain reserves. And again, that ultimately may be one of the options. But this project is absolutely achievable. And the effort that has gone into it for the last 14 years is, merits still not losing faith and trying to close that gap and do as much of the project as we can as quickly as possible.
Well, I agree. I just think that, when we were looking at we're still, this gets pushed back. In the meantime, our list gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm wondering what's the smartest thing? And that's why I asked for that first project. What's going to affect our citizens the most? That's what I want to understand when we're going through this. And I said, it doesn't matter where the project is, whether it's in my district or anything else. I want to understand so we can have that discussion to see where's our money's best spent. So that's why I asked the question.
No, and I agree with the skepticism because we're in the same boat. Believe me, I have those conversations internally with staff all the time. We have avenues to make this work. As the manager said, the Flood Commission does sit on reserves. Part of the reason that those reserves are sitting there is for this project, if we have to. Obviously, that risks other projects because we use that money to leverage matches for Colonia's grants or other things so that we can make other projects move forward. So it's not our first option. But if we don't ask legislature for the money, we definitely won't get anything from them. One of the things that that we've had discussions with too is with the State Dam Safety Bureau chief. They understand this project. They're reviewing it with the Army Corps. And from year to year, they get funds to work on capital projects as well. And so this could come out of some of their funds as well. So I'm definitely not willing to pull the plug on it. We've got so much that we've already spent, millions of dollars that we've already spent.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. And that's why I say I understand why it's number 6. It's just because of that very reason.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, I just wonder, if we get to a certain point and we don't have the money, what do we do?
Yeah. Well, that's it, is we'll make sure it gets built one way or the other. That's the core, is making sure it gets done. Because we've got to get the village of Hatch to a place where they're not literally every time it storms looking up going, I hope this isn't the one. So that's kind of our goal.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Chaparro.
And I also recall years ago when Hatch flooded and it was a disaster area, people were left without their homes. People lost all their belongings. And so it's maybe something that we need to remember that this happened several years ago. I don't remember how many years ago, quite frankly, but I recall people picking up sandbags and huge flooding in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you. John, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. It appears to me that we've already collected $4.7 million from the state. We've got $10 million that we were promised from the Army, but we have to match the $10 million. Am I correct? Is it one to one, or is it?
The match percentage doesn't matter at this point.
Okay.
The Army Corps only goes up to 10 million.
Well,
So
I
if
know,
it
but-
turns out to be 20 million or 21 million,
I guess
still
my
have to come
point,
up
my
with the extra
question,
10 to
what
11.
I'm trying to get to here, John, is that if we've got 4.7 million, we're asking for 5.7 million, are we
Mm-hmm.
asking for 5.7 million in order to get us up to the 10 million or to totally fund the project? So if we give you the 5 point, or if we get the 5.7,
Mm-hmm.
will this totally fund what we need to do?
As of the
think.
numbers I have today, yes.
Okay. And what's the 1,088,000? What is that? That looks like US, no, what kind of, who matched that?
Where is that?
At the bottom line.
Oh, that's basically part that we've already put in terms of coming out of the Flood Commission funds.
Okay,
So the Flood Commission funded the feasibility study. We paid almost $1 million for that out of our own funds.
Right.
We've also matched other parts of it in terms of in-kind survey work. The federal funds can't be, go towards property, as an example. So we're currently working to acquire all the properties, as well as we've got some EBID improvements that we have to do. So a lot of that is that 1 million that's already been spent.
so let's say we don't get to 5.7, can we still start in 2024, or can we start sooner?
I'm basing the 2024 on the Army Corps schedule. They gave me a fresh schedule last week. We should be getting our 60% review documents from them in September of this year. But then their review processes take a long time because they have to ship them out to other agencies around the country. So right now, the schedule's 2024.
Okay, without the 5.7, we can still start, and not that we're going to avoid it. I mean, I think we still should probably ask for it. But I'm saying if we don't have the money, we can continue if Army's ready in 2024.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So just so you're aware, we've also gone through a very extensive amount of work that the Flood Commission has paid for, obviously out of our own funds, which is the property for the dam site itself. It sits on about 130 acres of state land. And so the Flood Commission has gone through the process with the State Land Office of acquiring that. They have a very extended process which requires, it actually goes out to bid. And so that bid starts here in a couple weeks. And we're prepared, ready to move on that as soon as it does get awarded. The timeline that they gave us was September of this year. Once we have acquisition of the property, there's other improvements that we have to do out of our own funds, which includes, there's a water line. The main distribution line for the city of Hatch is in the pooling area of the dam. That has to be relocated. So between now and 2024, there are lots of other efforts that we have to do. And a lot of the matching money that we have from the state will be used for some of those. And that all goes towards the dollars for the entire project.
What about the state funds we've been using?
Thank you.
Right. And the state funds that we've already got, we've been using them for the design of the water line, for the all of the other easements and rights-of-way that we have to get, as well as for environmental documentation. So we've already expended quite a few of the grants that were out there. We have another one that expires in June of 2023, and that'll be used for the construction of the water line itself. So we're continually spending the state's money that they've given us, and that all gets credited towards our match for the structure.
Thank you, John, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. Any other questions? Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
And the last one on this list is La Union. So,
What about Brahma? It's number 7.
oh, sorry, I skipped Brahman. Sorry, I was getting excited. I was almost done. So Brahman Diversion Channel, again, it's a big project, 5.2 miles long from approximately Brahman Road all the way down to Isaacs Lake. We're very, very close to having a set of drawings for that. I'm hoping to actually go to construction in the current year. So between now and December, I'm hoping to go to construction. The project is gotten awfully large. We've had to make a couple of modifications. The amount of earth that we excavate out of this channel has gotten extremely large, and it's blown the budget up significantly because of fuel prices. So we're talking 500,000 cubic yards of dirt that we have to find a place for. And so we've gone back to the state engineer's office and to BLM, and they've granted us additional easements to use a lot of that material on site. So that'll help with some of the prices. We actually reduce our prices from that significantly. So I'm expecting that project is going to be close to 21 million is the total. This amount helps us move forward with the construction. It's going to be phased amount for sure. So this amount of dollars will actually get us very, very close to the end based on what the latest engineering numbers were. We currently have a little over 11 million that we've gotten between ARPA funds as well as state funds. And that's enough to do phase one, which will basically go from Holman Road all the way down to Isaacs Lake. And so the rest of the channel is what this amount here would cover.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Chaparro?
I have a question for you, please. Can you pull that up on Google Earth so that the other commissioners are able to see the area? And if this isn't constructed along with the East Mesa flood control improvement, which is number 25, we have had extensive growth in that area. And it's my opinion that if number 7 and number 25 are not put in fairly quickly, there's danger of flooding out hundreds of homes.
Okay.
Is that correct?
So first I'll zoom out here a little bit so you can see where it's at. So Brahman Road is right here. This is Highway 70. This is the existing Brahman channel. And existing, it turns and goes down this way. It's just an earthen line channel that needs a lot of work at this point. What the channel does is take water from here and takes it all the way down to this lake. And the lake is just a retention area. All the water on the East Mesa gets to there anyways. So we're putting it in a place where it's already there. So this distance from the lake back up here to the existing structure is 5.2 miles. Now, the significance of this channel is that all of the projects that are planned in the future for all of this development, they all push the water directly to that channel to get it out and take it down to the lake. So this is the backbone of that drainage network that came from the Drainage Master Plan. Even the project that we built last year along Longhorn Road, we built ponds in this area. Ultimately, when they overflow, and they will, that water is planned to be directed down Arroyo Road and eventually out to ponding areas that then push it back out to that same channel, out to that diversion channel. Any questions about where this is at and the significance of it? Because it affects an enormous amount of properties.
Can you just pull back so that we can see more of the development so the other commissioners can see how many homes may be affected and the population along that?
It's a massive corridor for sure. All the projects all the way down through this area are considered part of the East Mesa Master Plan. And all the water from all those areas gets diverted to that particular channel.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask John if he would zoom in on the project there on the East Mesa that has already been completed. That may tie into Commissioner Chaparro's question about item 25.
Yeah, one of the things is this Google Earth is not up to date, so it doesn't have the actual ponds on it. But those ponds are right in this area here. And so we captured this flow path as well as this flow path, as well as the flow path that comes under 70 and through this area. And this project has been largely successful. We've talked to the residents and they've been very pleased with the results. They no longer get flooded out. So this project has been massively successful. But the ponds were designed only for a small detention. They don't hold a large amount of water, even though they're massive. These ponds are 14 acres in size. And so that still doesn't handle that 100-year event that we like to design for. Part of that is because the topography made it very difficult to do. So we ultimately have to continue to discharge water from those down through this area. And you can just see the sheer number of homes that are just in this one small area. So there are thousands of homes that these projects all help.
And John, may I ask another question? Can you zoom up more so that we can see if that project possibly affects the Metro Verde area?
Okay, it does not affect Metro Verde. That's actually within the city. Metro Verde is over in this area. So their water ultimately could get to Isaac Lake. You can see this pathway here. My understanding is that ultimately there's some discussion about some of the new developments pushing water over there. And there was a study done at one point in time that showed that Isaacs Lake has the capacity to handle the stormwater from everything from Highway 25 up to the mountains on that side of 70. So there's plenty of capacity there. But obviously those projects in Metro Verde and those other areas, that's all within the city.
Thank you.
And currently they don't go there. They have their own ponding areas out there.
And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, item 25, how does that tie into any of this? Item 25,
Okay?
East Mesa Flood Control
Yeah.
Improvements.
So these Mesa flood improvements, what it does is, and I briefly discussed this, is these ponds that were already constructed here. This is Longhorn Road here, Corona Road here, and this is Arroyo Road. These ponds will ultimately, we get a really big storm, they will overflow. And so our plan is to continue building the infrastructure below these ponds to get down to this area where we create some more ponding and then some more ponding down here. So I believe, let's see, Moon Gate is right here, just for your reference. And the plan calls for some ponding in this open area as well as more diversion down Arroyo Road. And then ultimately it pulls water out to the north, out to the Dragonfly Channel. So it's the East Mesa flood improvements is basically a series of projects that are start to build out those interior ponds that will then drain out to the Dragonfly Channel. Any other questions?
Any other, Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, just for a second, I'm looking at the image you have here. If you look in the center of the image, it looks like part of the arroyo that carries that water is east of some development and then west of it as well. Where you take your hand now to the right and up to the left. Now, well, you went too far. That little
Here?
spot, no, the little spot right to the right of that, just right there.
Right in here?
Yeah, looks like there's some arroyo right there as well.
There is.
And then it looks like there's a house or something right next to that, which you actually, I'm surprised that that's not going to affect that home and some of that building already. Do we deal with that?
There are a lot of projects planned out here. There was actually a plan to build a channel along Moongate, which is this road here, that would alleviate that flooding as well. That's not in our current plan, but it is in the master drainage plan. So that's not in our next steps, but yeah, you can look through here. So you can see all of the places where there's extra greenness. This is typically a flow path right here. And then it flows down through here and gets out into this area. So there's, all over this area, there are existing arroyos that people have to deal with on a regular basis. And so we're trying to build the infrastructure to where we can start to drain those areas.
Yeah, my observation there is I think that our community development and us have to do a great job of making sure the retention and water control and flow from new developments is actually paramount. That's all.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's part of the
not
reason why the
this.
Flood Commission reviews building permits everywhere, so that we can make sure that homes are elevated as they need to be.
And allow water to run around them
Yes.
without erosion.
Yeah, and we look at the arroyos when we get building plans. We basically steer people away from building in arroyos for that reason, and try to get them as far away from arroyos as they can, because we do tend to crowd arroyos in our development. But there's nothing in our code that says that they can't. So it's something that we do in the building permit process, is try to direct those efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. Mr. Gwen, just curious, I think, how much, I know, I mean, this is one of the common themes here. How much did this project increase in terms of overall cost?
So that's a good question. It's hard to quantify because things have changed dramatically. When the original plan was put together for the Dragonfly Brahman Channel diversion, it called for a dam upstream. And that was from the plan. Let me take you out and show you where that's at. So right here where the existing Brahman Channel was built, there was planned to be a dam right here. Over time, in our adverse reaction to having dams, because they're so expensive and there are so many regulations that go with them, we determined that instead of building a dam, that we were going to make the channel larger. So the cost of the channel has increased significantly, partially because of design changes. So instead of having a dam to hold the water, we're diverting it all down to the lake. So it's kind of it's a big change in design, and that's really what has caused some of the changes. But obviously, time, the original cost of the plan was estimated to be about $7 million, and we're at $20 million. So while that sounds like a pretty significant increase in cost, it's way cheaper than what a dam would be, and we see that from the Hatch Dam. And this dam would have to be something similar in size to the Hatch Dam. So it's actually, in terms of overall projects, it's actually a cost savings for us.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And part of the reason I ask is it was my understanding that when we approved funds through ARPA for this project, this was going to essentially almost complete this project, but it doesn't seem like we're anywhere close to that. So again, I guess that's where I'm trying to get an understanding of, like it is with the Spring Canyon Dam and so on, where has it been that our cost increases have caused this? Because, you know, I guess what was seen and what was unforeseen, and I guess I'm starting to get a little frustration myself, and this is just me. I'm just speaking for myself, obviously. But you know, when we're looking at this monies we got from ARPA, the hope was that we were going to be able to take these ARPA funds and knock projects off this list.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding is we're not, and it's this frustration of, you know, this infusion of $42 million has not. I guess, like I said, I feel a little blindsided by some of this. So that's where my frustration comes from. So, and that's where that's why I say my question. I know that's not your fault, Mr. Gwynn. Like I said, I think that's where my frustration comes out.
Mr. Chairman, if I just might address part of that. And again, it's not an argument. The 5 million was oriented to helping complete the channel, not to complete the totality of the project. We knew at the time that we were giving $5 million that it wasn't going to complete the entirety of the project. But certainly John's intent, and maybe he should be addressing a little bit more of that, is how far can we go? We keep talking about a gap, but how far can we go and what are the plans in terms of utilizing the money that we currently have? Because it will achieve some real significant milestones in the project.
Correct. One of the things that we have in our head, and again, we have to look at this in terms of phases just because of the sheer cost, is the first phase, which covers essentially what we've already acquired in terms of dollars, will construct the big crossing of the channel at Holman Road, and it will construct the channel all the way down to Isaacs Lake. Now, depending on how gas prices affect this project, because as I said, the biggest part of this is fuel, we may be able to go 500, 1,000 feet further to the east from Holman Road. So it gets us a very large segment of the Arroyo and channel in place, the monies that we have now, and it gets the most expensive items of the channel out of the way. The Holman crossing is a large number of box culverts. And we have to elevate the road, we have to relocate utilities, and so that's a largest portion of that. In making the channel larger, like I said, instead of building a dam upstream, one of the things that we've done is we've made that crossing much larger. So the channel, the existing channel, the proposed channel starts off at about 200 feet wide at the most eastern end. By the time it gets to Isaacs Lake, it's 700 feet wide. Part of that is because we're trying to make sure that the velocity of the water going into the lake doesn't cause any problems with migrating birds, because that does have some very nice riparian areas for birds and nesting species. So we have to make sure that it's going really slow when it gets in there. So there's been some design changes for sure that have affected that. The money that we already have will do a very significant portion of the Arroyo, of the channel. So I think in the future, our plan is to continue, if we can get funding from this coming legislative season, basically the construction will be able to continue to roll. The way that we're going to bid this out is it's going to be bid out in phases, but as additive alternates, so that if we get more funding, we don't even pull the contractor off site. And so if we can keep them rolling with continued funding, we can actually save an awful lot of dollars in mobilization and other costs, bonds and those sorts of things that contractors have to put together in order to pull off the job and pull back on.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Any other questions on the Brahman Diversion Channel?
Mr. Chair, just one quick one, sorry. The 5 million in ARPA, are we going to have has that already been spent?
No, that's
So
construction.
So we
That's
don't
going to
have
be used
any,
in construction.
so how much construction do we have to finish before we can actually pay something with that? So we're not at risk of losing it, are we?
No, since we plan to start construction
year?
this fall,
Right.
the ARPA money doesn't have to be used. It has to be completely allocated by December of 2024 and used
Yeah.
by 2026.
And we'll be there?
We have plenty of time, but that, all of that money, plus all the money that we've already received from legislature, should be expended in the next 12 to 18 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Okay. So now you have the item number 10, which is the La Union drainage improvements.
Yep, and we'll go back over to that one. This is kind of a significant project for us because of, obviously, the issues from last year. So what we'll do is we'll talk about several different items. First of all, there's obviously two dams. The one here where the hand is the B dam. This is the one that caused us so much issues last year. There's been an awful lot of work done to it over the past 12 months. It's in much better condition, but it definitely can't handle the big 100-year storm. It might be able to handle a 50-year storm or something along those lines. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is this money for this project. We've already gotten some money from Colonias to start the project, or at least we were awarded. It'll be a few months before the contracts come in. Is below these structures is vacant land. Any of our projects that we plan to do would require us to build something on those properties. So what the plan is to build flood control between those dams and the village, and with the 3.5, which is the total project at this point. Actually, I think it's 5 million, sorry. Is to find a way to get the water around the community and out to where it needs to be. But there's an awful lot to do. So this particular item is to start the process. We're already working on design out of our own funds and out of some money that we received out of the last legislative session. We got about $490,000 out of the last legislative session. So we're working on design of this project, and it will basically take the place of these dams. And so we're a long ways away from getting there. I don't even have a conceptual that I can show you of what that project looks like. But essentially, the water has to get out to one of EBID's facilities. Here's the west drain. This is the one that has capacity issues that keeps us from putting water into it. This is a lateral, an EBID lateral, that is also possible to use if we get permissions. Again, both of these require permissions from EBID. So the project is essentially to build infrastructure between the dams that eventually we can either decommission the dams or repurpose them to make the function of our project work better. There is existing work that we're already working on in the community, and I'm sure you're all very aware of the Mendez properties. Those properties are all of these. The county now owns all of those properties, and all of the homes have been demolished. There's still some cleanup that's happening as we speak. But essentially, that water that gets to there comes down this road and flows right through this area. So one of the projects we're working on, we've already let the contract to an engineer for the design work of capturing this water, getting it down Conejo to Centenario, and putting it directly into the pond that we already own downstream. And this pond has been enlarged since last year. We've gone down several feet with it. So there's been an enormous amount of efforts in the past 12 months to get to where we are today. Is there any particular question that you have about this project that's on the ICIP list?
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, this is the project I had in mind when we were talking to the USDA, Agriculture, AG, okay? The Ag Department. This is the project I had in mind because we're actually going through the neighborhood here to try to get some funding from the Ag, Federal Ag Department. Okay?
Correct.
And have you looked into that yet? Or do you plan
I've
to?
been in conversation with NRCS about doing that.
Okay.
One of the issues, they actually have a good amount of funding to do a project like that.
Yeah,
The biggest problem with them is time.
yeah, they need it done right away.
Yeah, the first thing that they will want to do is they would do a watershed study, which I'm already doing one with them in another area. The watershed study takes over 2 years. And so that's just the way they do things. And so nothing would happen in those 2 years. And then by the time they would actually get something constructed, you're probably closer 5, 6 years. So I didn't really opt for funding from them in this area. While they do have money and they would agree to it from our past issue, I think timing is not on our friend in this one.
As a result of this, we discovered that some of our assets weren't listed correctly because New Mexico Association of Counties is not going to reimburse us $17 million. Have we corrected that?
No, we
Should we
haven't.
correct that?
That's a question that we have been working with Stephen Mallard, to the risk assessment person, to go through and figure out how that's done. One of the things that, that most places do is they don't necessarily insure the dams themselves. That's one of the problems, is that if you look at all the dams, the insurance company was kind of hit for a loop with this particular one because we've never had a claim. We've never done a claim on insurance for these structures in the past. And we've had problems with dams in the past, but this was a requirement from the governor for use of those emergency funds, is that we file an insurance claim. And so that's why today we still haven't received any money from the governor yet, because of the insurance side. And so it's a tricky issue for sure. And we're definitely looking at all the ins and outs of what has to be done. But pure and simply, I can tell you that you're probably not going to be able to afford insuring all the dams.
Yeah, I figured that.
You know, that's part of an issue, is that you spend so much money on that you could probably rebuild dams. I think the kind of money you're talking about.
But doesn't having them not valued correctly also affect the amount we can get support from FEMA for as well?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
FEMA doesn't look at that at all. The big thing for FEMA is if it reaches the level of a federally declared disaster.
Which is $5 billion.
No, it's 3 to 5 million, right? Yeah, 3.5 million.
Okay.
So that's the thing that we never reached in this particular incident, is we never reached that level, and so we never got a federal declaration.
So I guess now, and help me, I want to stop this really quickly. I don't want to go a long way on this. But so if we had actually had to, let's just hypothetically, if we just said those dams were worth $3 million and they needed to be repaired and they were the problem, then would we have met that threshold from FEMA by having them just simply considered as assets that were worth that?
No, because they base their numbers on what it would cost to repair them, not what you say their cost is.
But it is costing us more than $2.5 million to repair them.
So as an example, we spent a little over $300,000 on the La Union V. So how do you classify that as 3.5 million?
I'm just saying, looking at the numbers you're asking us for now, with this whole
That's-
Union project.
That's very different.
It's more than,
That's not repairing damage. That's additional new infrastructure.
okay. Yeah, I don't want to go down this road too far, so let's move on.
Okay,
I have more questions we'll talk about later. Thank you.
sure. Anytime you'd like to speak in private or offline, let me know.
Thanks, John.
Other questions? There's a few more on other pages if you want to talk to those, but.
Before you get into, I don't think we don't need to totally deep dive, but I don't know if there's any questions on any of the other projects outside of the top 10 for the Flood Commission at this point. If there isn't, well. Okay.
I'm good at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gwynn. Appreciate it. All right.
Mr. Chairman, may we jump to item number 3?
Sure.
And this is the only one under you. That's right.
Chair Sanchez and members of the commission, Stephen Lopez from the Office of Emergency Management. You all have heard already our desire to complete what has been on the county strategic plan for well before I arrived. I'm not sure, Mr. Macias, if you know how long it's been on there, but this has been a priority to get a new Office of Emergency Management facility and a new Emergency Operations Center. We have lined up some funding for it, thanks to both ARPA appropriations and budget appropriations from this commission, as well as $1.5 million in congressionally designated spending from this current fiscal year, federal fiscal year. And we are asking for $6.3 million in ICIP funds to help us get to our base construction. That would also serve as part of the federal match for the $1.5 million that's already appropriated. I do want to say that we have asked for another $1.5 million in this coming federal fiscal year. However, the potential change in the political climate at the federal level after this November's election season really introduces a lot of uncertainty. So we are not counting on that additional $1.5 million ask. So this $6.3 million is what we're asking for to make the project whole. And if we do end up getting that additional $1.5 million or any portion thereof from the federal level, that will actually assist us with the furnishings and equipment for the new facility. So with that, be happy to take any questions you might have.
So any questions for Ms. Lopez?
And again, Mr. Chairman, this is designated as a county-wide priority so that we can discuss it with all of the legislators because of the impact within all districts within the county.
Okay. I don't know, Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, there's just there's a typo here. It shows a percent instead of a dollar sign.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Reynolds, you are absolutely correct. I wish we could get, what is that, 1 million % of the project covered, but yes, that is a dollar sign. Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. You get off easy. And I know, just for clarity, I know on the item number 2, which is the 3rd Judicial District Court expansion, we had that discussion with Judge Arrieta at the end, at our last BOCC meeting last week on the 12th, so.
And Mr. Chair, I personally, although I've had just a passing discussion with the clerk, I'm not clear about item number 4. Not that I'm not clear in terms of what it is, but in terms of my understanding is that the clerk is out of town. That's what I'm being told by Ms. Blackwell. So I don't know how you want us to proceed on that item.
We can go on to the next item, I think, right now.
Okay, so that's the
There's no-
South Central Wastewater System Rehabilitation, and I'll ask Mr. Navarrete to come forward.
Good morning, Chair Sanchez, Commissioners. My name is Eric Navarrete. I'm the new Utilities Manager. And so on the ICIP, just kind of give you a quick background. The ICIP, there are 4 utilities projects, but in the top 10, there's only one with utilities in mind. Let me, just as a point of reference, let me go ahead and just pull up oh, there it is. So what we're focusing on the South Central area of the utility system, we're looking at making improvements to continue to plan, design, and construct the operational systems that we have at the wastewater treatment plant for South Central. And our South Central plant, we treat over, right now, we currently treat about 380,000 gallons per day of wastewater. The plant itself is designed up to 1.05 million gallons per day, so we're not even at 50% of our design capacity. And so what we're focusing on, we do have ongoing projects right now at the treatment plant in the South Central wastewater system, but we're really wanting to continue to make improvements to the operations. We're wanting to do some electrical upgrades, some supervisory control and data acquisition system, our SCADA system, instrumentation and controls. We also need to be able to do some backup generators for, we did get some funding from last capital outlay season last year, but it wasn't for all of our lift stations. And so we are focusing on that. as well as being able to make inspections and assessments on our force main conditions and our manholes. There's some additional improvements that we need to do with inspections, making sure that we continue to make improvements. And of course, we will also be focusing on making those improvements on some of those manholes, as far as trying to avoid any type of failure on manholes and also on casings themselves that are crossing under EBID structures and railroad crossings. And so if you have any questions, please feel free.
Real quick, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. How old is this system? Because you're talking about upgrading 10 lift stations, 2 treatment plants, and 9 rehabilitation, 9 lift stations. How old is this system?
So back in the early 2000s, the South Central Wastewater Treatment Facility was built, and I believe that's when the county started making the attempts to provide constituent services for wastewater collections. So it's over 20 years.
Okay, so with the 1 million per day it can handle, the usage hasn't been that high, like less than 30%, like right around 30%. So with the 2.8 million from the Colonias funds, is this what you're talking about, or is this in addition to that?
This is in addition, correct. We still have an award we just received for the 2022 Colonias funds, and we have ongoing projects that do have additional funding that we do have going on. But treatment plants, just like flood commission or flood control dams, they're very expensive, and so we have multiple projects going on right now at the treatment plant to make improvements. We're also looking at still doing rehab on existing lift stations, but the funds that we do have, because of escalation dollars on construction costs, we didn't have all the sufficient funds to be able to complete all of the work we had targeted.
Again, Mr. Chairman, so that it simplifies, there's millions of dollars over the course of the last 3 to 4 years that have come in to do this, almost this replacement of the system. The 2.8 that we're identifying as a priority, let me make sure that that was right, 2.8 is what remains to have completed the entirety of the rehabilitation of the system. And we anticipate pursuing additional monies from the legislative session and from the Colonias Trust Fund come next March to now be able to complete the entirety. There is still millions of dollars that are available to the county that the county has already accepted that is being put into place as we speak. So this is the last leg that will complete the totality of the restoration of the system.
One more question. How many users do we have on the system?
So currently, kind of give you a general background for the whole utility, just because I don't have it a specific number off the top of my head, but we have about
It's
34.
700 to 800 users that are connected to this particular system. So I think talking about the wider system, which would include Chaparral, is going to mislead you on the numbers. My understanding is that we have 700 to 800 households connected into the system in the southern part.
They're
of the
not
county.
in Chaparral? They're not in Chaparral?
This is not in Chaparral, so it's not to confuse the issues. The Chaparral wastewater system is something completely different. There is a system there, of course, in Chaparral, but it doesn't have anything to do with this particular priority.
Okay.
So one of the things
This
with
is the
this,
South Central, it's the plant, and I don't know if you can pull up Google Earth.
Well,
This
yeah,
was,
isn't it?
But it
what's
does
that?
say
It's in Vado.
Yeah.
It's in Vado. The plant's in Vado, but it has hooked up San Miguel, Mesquite, La Mesa, Vado, Chamberino, Berino. It has all 6 of those communities hooked up into this particular system, just so that there isn't any confusion.
Okay, so it's a misnomer to have the Chaparral system, or that's just what we named it?
No, there's also, the Chaparral system is, I think.
Yes,
isn't
but
there?
it's a distinct and separate system. It's way over in Chaparral.
Okay, but this item number 5 lists it as part of the,
Oh, I see.
am I reading it wrong?
No, you're reading it correctly. I see it too. I think that's what we're getting clarification, that it
That's-
should be out of
Yeah,
it.
no, I'm
Because
talking to
item-
Michelle back here. No, that hasn't, Chaparral doesn't have anything to do with this amount of money.
We still have, I think it's item 31 on our ICIP that has it broken out for Chaparral.
Okay.
But that's, I understand, yeah. I
Yeah,
see
that's
the
why it was a
description now.
that was my, I guess, my misunderstanding of reading it and seeing Chaparral, thinking it was applying to Chaparral.
No, primarily, this is South Central area that we're focusing in on. One of the things that, here we have our South Central wastewater treatment plant. This is what treats 1.05 million gallons per day of wastewater. We're at 380,000 gallons per day. Our effluent discharges into the Rio Grande. So this treatment plant, we actually have several of the Colonia areas. We have Vado, Berino, we have San Miguel, La Mesa, we have Chamberino, Berino, that they all provide services to those areas. And also the Mesquite area, Lower Rio Grande Public Water Works Authority, they send their effluent or influent to us, and we treat that as well. And so you can kind of see we are, this is the largest regional plant or system that the Doña Ana County does own and operate.
Okay, so should we just remove the Chaparral system from this item?
Yes, no, we're going to do that. It's just, I'm not sure why it was.
Yeah, it was an oversight, I think, on my part. I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
The only question I have, Mr. Navarrete, was around the SCADA system, and you talk on the controls. Is that as just an improvement over what was had, and what was the last time those were, I guess, implemented? What's the age of those systems?
Yes, great question, Chair Sanchez. So as far as our SCADA, what it does is it's an instrumentation and automation ability for us to be able to automate more controls and systems that right now we're having, because of the age and because it is technology driven, we can't find parts to replace what are failing. And so we're trying to do the upgrades and replacement really, but because we can't find existing apples for apples parts, we have to now usually find what's on the market. And so that's one of the systems that
So
we
it's an
have to.
obsolescence issue, or?
Exactly. And then those systems are starting to give us more errors and issues that come up. And so one of the things that, most of the newer utility SCADA systems, they actually give you more interaction with desktop computers, right? You can control valves and pumps, but we don't have that ability. We just have more of a warning indication at this point. So that's one of the things that we're looking at needing to make improvements to.
Okay, and that's what I was curious on in terms of the age versus the improvements. And I mean, obviously, we'd love to have the latest and greatest. And that's, I just didn't know if it's something that we have, it's just a nice to have, or is it something significant? But I understand, like I said, having, especially when you have remote sites out there, being able to communicate with some
Yes.
of those and control them is
Oh,
helpful.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
And again, I want to note that the Colonias Trust Fund did provide us an additional $2.8 million, and that still has to, the grant agreement still has to come to the commission to accept that money.
So from what I could tell, I think the original amount was at 5.6 million.
Yes, right.
And that's where that 2.8 came from, that was removed from the Colonias Infrastructure Fund.
Right.
Okay. I think we have our engineering and roads. Is that what I
Yes,
see?
if we can jump to 8 and 9.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Sanchez and Commissioners. My name is Mo Mobit. I know you haven't seen me in a while, but I've been here 3 months, so it's an honor to be in front of you and talk about our projects. You have it? Yeah, this is a whole map of the county and shows all the projects at each pinpoint and, oops, one back. And I don't know which projects you are more interested to see, but they're listed as on the ICIP schedule. And the numbers I have for our department is number 8. It starts with El Camino Real. That's a 4.2 mile project. and the estimated cost is about $4.2 million. This is the segmental sections of the El Camino Real. We broke it down in sections based on the funding available. If you want to do just using the existing funding right now, 825,000, we can only finish up 0.9 miles of it. And we have another estimate for 1.2 that does add to it to 1.2 miles because of the capital appropriation. We get some 400,000 coming up. And then the final, if we get the total funding, would be 4.2 miles for the $4.2 million. I don't know if you have that one either or not. Thank you, Jonathan. Any question on that one, Commissioners?
Is there any questions on the Camino Real project? Okay.
The next project is the Desert Windway. That's a 4.5 mile project. An estimated cost is $8.2 million. And this is a kind of proposed look it would look when we finish with it. You see it right now. It's a portion of it, about 1.2 miles of it is in a virgin land in a BLM property that has no roads at all, and the rest of it is very narrow paved road, and this will improve the whole road to a 12-foot lanes and a 2-foot shoulder. But we designed it for also ultimate, so in case we have to increase the width to 4 lane.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is really to, at least management, a real game changer. This connects, it will connect into the Doña Ana interstate exchange. It'll be running parallel to Highway 70. It'll certainly provide a lot of relief, and it'll also open up federal lands to potential tourism because it'll make it those lands very accessible. That's part of the priority to the project. And again, the commission has already provided the $800,000+ in terms of the design.
Mr. Macias, is there, and this is just kind of not specific, well, I guess it is part of this project, but not specific to the ICIP portion of it, but is this at all on the MPO's master plan for the?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay,
Is
I couldn't recall when we approved it.
Ciro Las Cruces and also Doña Ana County
Okay.
master plan. Yes.
I wasn't sure, I couldn't recall if Desert Windway was. I know we've considered Del Rey to be considered a artery, but I wasn't sure if this was on there, so thank you for that
Chairman
clarification.
Sanchez, you're correct.
And
That's
Mr. Chairman, the city of Las Cruces has really expressed a lot of enthusiasm for this project as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on the Desert Windway?
Mr. Chair, where's that
Madam Vice Chair.
located on Desert Windway?
I'm sorry?
Where is it located?
It's the East Mesa.
East
It's,
Mesa?
yes. I'm not sure, are you familiar with Red Hawk Golf Course? Part
Chair
of the
Sanchez,
Gowan.
Commissioner, if you north of Las Cruces, the Doña Ana exit,
Other way,
that ties to Doña Ana exit.
Oh, I see.
right there, right, if you look towards the top, you'll see it, you'll see the pin on it.
Right there.
So if you zoom out, I believe, if you zoom out, you'll see where, from what I understand, the I-25 intersection at Doña Ana, and then if you were to kind of scroll further east, I think the intent, from from what I understand, is to connect
All the way.
all the way north, or east. So if you keep scrolling east, there we go, by Red Hawk Golf Course.
So that's in District 2? I mean, District 4?
That's correct. It's basically the East Mesa, further north.
Thank you.
And you can see that dark green is the golf course. You can see all of the, solid gray. All of that is trails and federal property that is hiked quite a bit. And again, it puts us in a position to really promote outdoor tourism and easy access to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Any other questions? I'd like to note that on this if my numbers are right, of the ICIP list, you have the distinction of having the most projects with 25 on this, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, we see all the
Chair Sanchez Commission, thank you. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but I always say we connect people to opportunity because nobody can do anything without roads. So you have to connect you all to your projects.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want us to address all of the kind of the bridges or show you.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't know if anybody had questions, or we can go a little further on. Commissioner Chaparro, I don't know if you had specific projects, or if we wanted, the nod was to let them go ahead and
Thank you,
Continue.
Mr. Chairman. I do have a question on item number 13, the Westmoreland area roadway and drainage improvement. If you could just explain that briefly. Thank you. And thank you for zooming in on that so that we can understand it better.
Chair Sanchez, Commissioner, that road connects a lot of the residential area and to the state road. That's why that Westmoreland was placed on the program.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask that they explain where the project is.
I believe this is an area that we just recently visited during the hearing.
Yes, I'm just saying, in case commissioners don't recall where it's located. Again, let me ask Mr. Moabit to explain where the project is.
If you wouldn't mind, sorry, what Mr. Macias was suggesting, if you would be able to provide the general area of the location of Westmoreland.
It's
Or
gonna
describe
start
the
from
area.
It shows the
I think if you zoom out a little bit,
pavement
that
is
would,
ending here
yeah.
and continues to the end. So it starts from, see the street there. I think I have it. This section of it that is not paved, that's the one we're gonna improve on the east side. East side of the pavement, all the way to the end of where the residential streets are.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Commissioner Chaparro had a more specific question.
I do have a more specific question. It's just regarding the drainage improvement. Can you just go into that just a bit?
Chair Sanchez, Commissioner Chaparro, we add in curb and gutter to retain the water on the pavement and take it to the east side. Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Chaparro. Are there any other questions on any of the other projects for our engineering and roads department?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Reynolds?
sorry. We don't have the Fillmore Arroyo on here, do we? That's not listed on here. When Robert Armijo was county engineer, he and I looked at it last year. We forgot to put it on the ICIP, the Fillmore Arroyo. There's some flooding there that's tentatively that might go in to Los Alturos. Are you guys familiar with that?
I think, are you talking about the Fillmore Road?
Fillmore Arroyo, yeah.
Okay.
Which one? And I don't know if that's even something that Mr. Gwynn might be able to also speak to. The Fillmore Arroyo and the flooding. I don't know, like I said, between the
Well,
two.
in the area, in that area there in Los Alturos, there's the
Commissioner Sanchez, Commissioner Reynolds, you talking about the Remington Road?
right.
Yeah, that one, we have a design for it.
Yeah.
It's not complete design, but proposed design, which is placement of about 20 culverts.
Right,
It's a low water crossing. It was designed as a low water crossing.
right.
And based on the history of the rainfall in this area, that road really never gets inundated with water, maybe once or twice a year, and only for a very short duration of time, like a couple of hours.
Okay.
So to spend about almost it's about $6 million project. We have, as an engineering judgment, I apologize, but we couldn't really justify we have a project for it, but it's not in the list as far as being funded.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because I've gotten calls from several of my constituents in that area along Remington, and the fact that Peter Hurd and the other way, there's only one way in and out of that area over there, and so they are concerned that if in fact the Arroyo does, wash out or something like that, because it doesn't allow the water to go past through there rather than flooding over the top of it, the water runs over Remington occasionally there. They're concerned that they won't have a way to get out if it actually washes out Remington Road because of the shape that Peter Hurd is in, trying to get out that way. And I know we have a project, but you don't think it's that much of a priority? And John, you agree?
Commissioner Sanchez, Commissioner Reynolds, that project has been there for a long time, and based on the history of it and our experience with it, we have not had a washout on that roadway. 500-year flood might damage it some, but it was designed to withstand the rainfall and the runoff as it is.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
There you go. John can shed more light on it.
So Mr. Mobed is correct. I don't see the road itself being washed out because of a storm. There may be debris on the road, and there may be some trouble passing the road because of that. But the road department's very good at getting out and getting that cleaned up relatively quickly. The other way out, while it could be done, it is pretty expensive. And I'm at a loss as to whether, I haven't studied it enough to know what the cost would be with it, but I know it would be a lot more dollars than we would probably want to expend as a secondary outlet.
Well, I know there's a guy actually has bought 30 lots out there that's going to develop that and try to do some repair on Peter Hurd Road. So we should probably see what he does before we make an action on this. Okay, thank you.
No, I just want to make sure, is there any other questions on engineering and roads at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Allens?
although this is not on the list, I've had some interest in Pacho Hills for the construction of sidewalks along Barcelona Ridge Road. Right now, people walk their dogs or just walk in the roadway itself. So I'd like the engineering department to come up with a cost to construct sidewalks along Barcelona Ridge Road so that it can go on to next year's list.
Okay, so I think I think if I understand, so this is not a project on the ICIP list at the moment, but it would be something that I believe Commissioner Ellens would like to possibly add to the list.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe we can visit with Commissioner Ellens directly and just add the project. Item number 14 is Picacho Hills Drive. That is a project there for potential sidewalks and other improvements. That's within the Picacho Hills area. That's the main road that leads into Picacho Hills, and I know that people have asked for sidewalks there. I think Commissioner Ellens mentioned Missionary Ridge. That's a completely different road, and we certainly can add that.
Okay, so maybe we can follow up with Commissioner Ellens as well. Will that work, Commissioner Ellens?
Yes.
That
Okay.
way, we can actually look at the length, what we're talking about, try to come up with cost estimates.
Okay,
Right.
And Chairman Sanchez, Jonathan Macias, ACI.
Let me add that traffic moves very quickly up and down Barcelona Ridge Road, which is why sidewalking is needed as a safety precaution.
Chairman Sanchez, the only thing I was going to add for the benefit of Commissioner Ellens is that we have had some requests and actually some funded projects in that area and some of that neighborhood. It's a delicate balance between being respectful of the original intent of what the developers did in terms of no sidewalks or limited sidewalks versus compatibility for adding those in the future, and trying to balance that between what some residents want and what they don't want added, so just for some context.
okay.
Again, Mr. Chairman, if a commissioner is requesting that something be added to the list, we'll certainly accommodate that and the cost estimates. And if the legislators choose that that's a priority, well, they can make that determination in terms of funding.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Ellens.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, item 48, I think that's on your list, isn't it?
48?
48? Is that on your list?
It's the Tortugas Lighting Road Safety Study and Improvements.
As I understand it, we did have a study done for safety in Tortugas, didn't we? And I haven't seen a copy of that.
I believe that that's what the state did. I don't believe that the county did that. We can certainly make a request for the study.
Yeah, I thought we did a study. It was like $60,000 contract for somebody to consider that. Was that the state that did that?
Commissioner Sanchez, Commissioner Reynolds, I don't have that information on that. I can check into it for you.
I'm unaware of any study that was performed through the county. So I have to assume, since Tortugas Road, technically it's a state road?
Well, the Tortugas Road is, but I'm talking about the Tortugas Lighting and Road Safety Study. That's for the whole area of Tortugas.
Oh, I
That's what
don't
this
believe
is
that the
about.
county has done that. We
Chair
certainly have
Sanchez,
had some-
Commissioner Reynolds, you're correct. I mean, project is going to include putting lights at every intersection. Yes, sir.
Correct. Right, okay.
But he's asking if there is a study done already. I'm unaware of it. Have you received the study?
I'm not aware of that either. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so this is, I'd like to see the priority of this go up a little bit, though, because this is something that they've been talking about for years. The only road out there that, the Tortugas Road being state roads, one we don't control, but the rest of them we do. And there's been an accident with a guy in a Mustang, had two people killed going out of the park there racing. There's one lady who's had her wall knocked down like 5 times. I think we need to do a safety study out there and consider, I think it's a higher priority than 48 is my point. If the board doesn't mind, I'd like to see this up at least in the top 20.
Chair Sanchez, Commissioner Reynolds, let me check into it and see where I can find this study. If there was one, I'm sure we have a record of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So anyway, is it possible to raise the priority on this even while we're doing that? So like in the top, like the 20?
I mean, I don't see any issue with moving it up. I think given where we're at on the top 10, obviously it's.
Yeah, I don't think it's top 10. Yeah, I think it's top 20.
I don't foresee an issue with that. I don't know, we can discuss that, I think is, that was going to be where I was going to go. I know we've discussed these items in the top 10. I didn't know if there were any other specific projects we wanted to ask questions about on this list. And then look to proceed to either approve, make any changes. And then that was kind of where I think was the flow or what I was looking to do. So I'll open it up at least on other projects on the list. Commissioner Chaparro, did you?
Mr. Chairman, can I note that to appear on this list is a priority in itself. This is, when you adopt this, they are all priorities. So I don't know that one gets any advantage in terms of where necessarily outside of the top 10 it appears, because all you need to have is a legislator who is interested in the project. This is an ICIP list that we submit to the state for potential funding. So it doesn't matter really ultimately, having worked with it for many years, it doesn't matter if it's almost number 1 versus if it's number 63. If you have legislators that are committed to the funding, then it's going to get funded. If you don't have legislators that are committed to the funding, then it doesn't get funded. I mean, certainly things can be funded internally by the commission itself, but those don't have to appear on the ICIP. We don't have any precondition of funding priorities within the county that they appear on the ICIP. This is strictly a state-driven mechanism for purposes of legislative funding. So again, it doesn't matter if you move it up or if you move it down. If the critical question is, do you have commitments or interest from legislators to fund that particular effort?
Commissioner Reynolds, did you? If, like I said, I don't know if there's any other projects within, outside of the top 10 we wanted to get a better understanding of at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chaparro?
I would like to hear on item 11 briefly, please.
Number
There's
11,
a
which is
representative
the
here, too.
remodel of the Rincon Fire Station.
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair,
Good
Commissioners.
morning.
Commissioner Chaparro, in regards to Fire Station 6, the Rincon Fire Station remodel, in an effort to continue to progress the fire service and prepare to establish paid staff 24/7 in the northern part of the county, our goals are to work towards a fire station that will accommodate 24-hour staff to include a PT facility, dorm rooms, a classroom for training and meeting for briefings, as well as preparing the station for the goals that we have set to reduce the carcinogens created by fires and establishing a clean room for cleaning personal protective equipment or PPE. Laundering this type of PPE and equipment, separating it from the apparatus bay floor and establishing an exhaust removal system. Those are the goals set forth with the effort at Station 6 in Rincon.
Thank you. I have another question regarding having dorm rooms for the 24-hour staff. How many rooms are you looking at?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Chaparro, generally we look at establishing a minimum of 4 dorm rooms to accommodate a 4-person engine company or staff. In this situation, depending on the future growth, we could put as many as 6 dorm rooms to accommodate the additional 2 personnel, which would be a rescue company.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions for Deputy Chief Crispin? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair?
Reynolds?
Yes. I'd like to know if there's anybody in any of the departments that would like to talk about any of their projects, just so we can lobby to some of the legislatures to get this done on their behalf, if there's anything important enough for them. Rather than us asking questions, there's something on here you want us to focus on, trying to make sure that that gets funded at the state by legislators.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I just want to, again, please note, although we try to make this list as brief as possible, the master list that Ms. Blackwell keeps identifies, and in fact, I guess this one does too, the Senate and the House district. So I can assure you that when we reach out to legislators, they are given a list of every item that appears on, out of these 63 projects. They're given a list of all of them, not just some of them, so that they can see individually within their district what specific projects are listed on the county's ICIP. And we discuss with them all of them and ask and answer whatever questions they have of each project, no matter where it is ranked.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Chaparro?
I'd like to move to adopt the 2024-2028 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan
Okay,
as
so
submitted.
I know we've got a motion and a second already on the floor. So I think, no problem. I appreciate it. I get the message. Before we do that, I don't know if there's any public input at this point on the ICIP that we have on our agenda for approval. Okay. Commissioner Reynolds, I know you had that request. I don't know, like I said, I think given what Commissioner Macias had just indicated where the location is, as long as it's on the list, it can be funded by a legislator. Do you have any issue with approving the list as is, or we can continue to modify at another time with the Tortugas project?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that offer. Thank you. And that consideration. I think at this point, as long as everything gets submitted in its entirety to the legislatures, then I don't think I have a problem. I think I can work with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no any last comments or questions, then we have a motion and a second to approve the ICIP list, agenda item number 1, as submitted. So let's bring
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens.
leaves me up in the air about the proposal to construct sidewalks along Barcelona Road. If we approve this today, does that preclude this from going on the list till next time?
Mr. Chairman, because we've already made a record of it and we're going to have to give an estimate, we will add that specific project to this list. And there can be additions so that the commission feels a little bit more comfortable. The understanding that I have or that we've looked at is that we can still amend this list all the way up to probably the beginning of December. Where it doesn't do any good is that once the Department of Finance and Administration has published everybody's list. It's not just Doña Ana County, everybody's. NMSU, the City of Las Cruces, the City of Santa Fe, they publish it in December. And beyond that point, you can't amend the list. But let me even assure you that if a legislator is given the opportunity to designate money and they want to designate it to a specific project, it still doesn't even have to appear on this list. They can just make that happen during the legislative session. So let me assure you and assure Commissioner Allens, we'll add sidewalks for Barcelona Ridge into the ICIP before it is formally submitted, and the opportunity for commissioners to add additional projects, although, I guess they get a little bit annoyed if you keep on adding a bunch of projects. But that still is possible, even September and October.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Reynolds? Did you-
Yes, Mr. Chair. Board. As Mr. Macias has pointed out, this list we're putting together is going to be a culmination of a list from all public entities in the area. And so I think it behooves us as a commission, if we have items on here that we think are important, that we should also, in addition to the county, and in addition to them just getting the list, should reach out to our legislatures to show them how important these things are to us. Because we're competing against the university, competing against, the other communities around here. We're also competing with the city of Las Cruces and for money all over the state in some cases, because our legislatures do have some discretion on being able to fund things in Otero County, Santa Fe, and other areas. So I think we do have something on this list. What I was trying to get to for the priorities is that we have to be engaged in this process to some degree to make sure we get our fair share. That's all I'm saying.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Reynolds, I can assure you that every year we meet with each of our legislators to go over all of these lists, and in terms of the priorities, obviously, they have the discretion ultimately to decide where they want to put their discretionary money. But I can assure you that we reach out to the governor and the governor's office in terms of priorities, and I think it's worked out, very well in terms of money that has come to the county. But we certainly will follow the direction or the advice that you're giving and assure you that we make that effort every year.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. Okay. Any last comments? Commissioner Chaparro?
Just to thank everyone that appeared and presented, and those who didn't, many thanks from this commission.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Chaparro, and thank you for, I know we took 2 hours, but I appreciated the time to kind of dig into the projects, not have to worry about additional items that were business behind us on top of this. So, okay. Well, then I'll ask Brandy, will you call the roll, please, on agenda item number 1?
Commissioner Ellens,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo,
Yes.
Chair Sanchez.
Yes.
This item has a resolution number. The number is 2022-40.
Okay. Well, that was our one agenda item for today. So if there are no objections, we'll call this meeting adjourned at 11:11 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for all your help, and thank you. We'll see you all next week.
And thank you for the efforts you put into this list as well in creating these projects. That's a tremendous effort. Thank you.